This is a CBC podcast.
Air Canada announced it's cancelling almost 10,000 flights this summer. The company says it's trying to stabilize the schedule, so that works out to 15% or about 150 flights every day. Now, as you know, we covered a story last week about some difficulties, some nightmare stories. It didn't involve Air Canada, a different airline. We've been hearing about staff shortages, lineups, and delays. Is there any possibility it could get worse? Or maybe it's going to get better as a result of this apparently drastic action, but one that Air Canada says is needed to ensure stability of service. For an update on what this means for people flying in and out of this province, we've reached Lois Barbour. She is owner and operator of Travel Time TPI. Good afternoon.
Hello, how are you?
Excellent. Now, I was going to ask you how you are, because I understand you are fresh from travel yourself.
Absolutely. I've actually been doing lots of travel. Travel is back, and that's good news for anybody in the travel industry. And I know that there's been lots in the news about disruptions to travel and so on. That is not everybody's experience. You do hear about the few people where that happens, and it's quite unfortunate. But we have hints and tips that we pass on to our clients to help reduce the issues that can cause for them.
Okay. I'm going to get to that in a bit, but where were you traveling from, if I may ask?
Recently to Vancouver, and about 4 weeks ago to the UK. Okay,
some big trips.
Yeah.
All right, and you just got back early in the morning, so I'm amazed you actually took our phone call.
Not a problem.
So how was your experience now, and be as frank as you can be?
Actually, I cannot complain about the experience that I've had. I've been traveling since, the first time I traveled was March of 2020, and I've traveled multiple times since then, but certainly more frequently in the last few months. There are definitely challenges, and it is a good idea to not expect the same as what you could have expected pre-pandemic. And I think just to be realistic about everybody's having the same issues with staffing shortages and things like that, and that is affecting the airlines and the airports for sure.
And I guess the other thing is that, I flew recently and had no problems in Montreal, and St. John's Airport was fine. But I guess it applies to security too. So in terms of Pearson and Vancouver and Heathrow, do we need to plan that, okay, if we're making a connection that maybe security might be an issue?
It's a good idea to always plan around that and not to make your connections too tight with that in mind. But that was always a possibility of what could happen. And honestly, in all of the airports that you mentioned, I've gone through them within the last month with no issues. Now, I do know that people are having some issues. And it seems to be random times and things like that, which I guess if you're going through those airports at really peak times, it could make a bit of a difference. But in my experience, I've had no issues as well, and I've certainly had lots of clients traveling on vacations. Have people in the UK right now and south and in some of the islands, and none of them had issues with their travel.
So with respect to the news and the announcement from Air Canada, how does that affect flights to and from St. John's?
Actually, there's no reduction in flights from St. John's announced as part of this. We have been on a bit of a reduced, I think, capacity ever since the pandemic, which they're slowly trying to increase, but obviously right now they're pulling that back a bit. And what it means is certain towns and cities in Atlantic Canada are going to be receiving less frequent flights over the summer. So that's the main difference, and it probably means that instead of being able to make a same-day connection, some of those guests will probably need to overnight somewhere in order to get to where they're going out of the Atlantic provinces.
Right. Have you seen anybody who's been forced to rebook tickets or anything like that?
We've been dealing with that since, anybody traveling since fall of 2020 and certainly into 2021. There's been a lot of schedule changes. That's normally a part of what we do every day, but much more so. So we're dealing with things like, to St. Lucia or to Grenada or Antigua, where our clients are going to Sandals resorts. All of a sudden, Air Canada changes the day of travel because they don't offer that service direct from Toronto every day anyway. So instead of doing it on a Saturday, they're doing it on a Sunday, or things like that. So it just kind of messes up the plan for the clients of when they're planning to travel and needing to be adaptive to that. Thankfully, our suppliers, being the best in the industry, have been very flexible throughout and allowing us to change the day of arrival or the day of departure when it needs to happen according to changes to the airline schedules, which obviously none of us can control.
No. Were you surprised that Air Canada announced it was reducing flights, in the volume that it did?
Yeah, I think I am somewhat surprised by that, because the thirst for travel is certainly back again, which is part of the problem, right? People are all of a sudden, the majority of the population are ready to take that vacation that they've been waiting so long for. And supply and demand means that the prices are quite high. So now the fact that they're actually cutting back on the capacity again is not going to be good news for the price points for anybody looking to take summer vacations.
Right. You think it was the right thing to do?
Rather than have so much disruption, I do think it was the right thing to do, and I know that they were recruiting and trying to get things back to pre-pandemic for staffing and so on. It's not only the airlines that's trying to do that. I'm not sure where everybody went who was working in those jobs before the pandemic, but they're not there to come back to them. So, trying to recruit and train, and part of the issue, too, is that there's a lot of new staff. So people being able to do things as efficiently as they did before may be part of the problem. One thing we can say is when you're going on vacation these days, pack your patience. Make that the first thing in your suitcase, and take lots of that in a carry-on bag as well as the essentials you need for a few days, because that's one of the things that's happening.
Yeah, that'd be a good T-shirt actually to make and hand out at the airports. Pack your patience.
Yes, for sure. That could be used, I think, on both sides of the equation, both on the airline side and on the customer side.
Yeah, we were talking to a guy last week, Lois, who's from Corner Brook, and his wife's from St. John's, and they were planning to come home from Victoria, BC, for a come home year. Mm-hmm. And they had a bit of a rough experience. He was very patient. He didn't blame the airlines. He sort of figures, what's going on? Pandemic is pandemic, and he wasn't that bitter about it. But he did tell us a story of trying to leave from Kamloops, I think, to Calgary via Toronto to St. John's, and they got to Calgary, flight was canceled, and they said they had to stay overnight, but that they couldn't WestJet said, we can't guarantee to get you in St. John's in less than 3 days, 3 days being the best case scenario. And I'm wondering, when you talked about the fact so many people, have changed jobs or whatever, what has happened to make the return to air travel so difficult?
I mean, they laid off people en masse. Like, basically, all the airlines with no planes flying was down to a skeleton crew. So people left the industry. They did retraining. They looked for other jobs. And now all of a sudden, when they've tried to ramp up in a hurry, those people are not there to come back. They've already found employment in other places. And the same thing is happening in the travel industry, to be quite frank. So that is the overall part of, when you shut down an industry entirely, you can't restart it on a dime. It's going to take some time to get people in place and the trainings in place that need to happen.
So are you saying it's the same thing with travel agents?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, there's lots of people who've left the industry, and our phones have been ringing off the hook for the, whatever people need to have questions about with travel these days. They're recognizing the value of a travel advisor in the equation, without a doubt. So that's if there's a good side to it, I guess it's made people realize that a professional travel advisor is just as essential in your planning as your accountant or your lawyer or anybody else who offers a professional service.
So you're a survivor.
I'm a survivor, absolutely.
Have you received any phone calls from people, at Dorval Airport or Pearson saying, Lois?
Well, we try to prepare people in advance for what could happen if. And trying to, if you're leaving from St. John's, same-day connections are almost a thing of the past. Like, don't try to do that. But give yourself the extra few hours of layover. Like my clients who went to Heathrow this past week, we gave them like a 10-hour layover in Montreal. And as it turned out, their flight out of St. John's was indeed delayed by about 3 hours. So that worked out to be a really good move in hindsight. Mm-hmm. Or either that or an overnight. Like lots of people are choosing to fly to Toronto the evening before, do the overnight, and then you're there for the morning flights. And the morning flights tend to out of the main gateways anyway, tend to be the ones that tend to get out on time. Mm-hmm. They haven't had time for all the delays of the day to back things up. My flight out of Montreal last night was delayed by a couple of hours because we were waiting for an incoming pilot. So obviously it's not that they don't plan to have the people in place, but one delay causes another delay, and you get a domino effect by the end of the day.
Was everybody patient and well-behaved?
Yeah, actually, people in the boarding area clapped when the pilot arrived. He was coming in from a flight from L.A., they told us. So that's what the delay was. So when he walked through and out to the aircraft, everybody clapped. So people appreciate the little things these days.
They certainly do. Listen, Lois, thank you for being so chipper and awake despite all of your long travels, and appreciate your advice. Thank you very much.
Not a problem. Thank you so much.
That's Lois Barbour, owner and operator of Travel Time TPI Inc. How about you? Have you traveled recently? What was your experience like? Because I have heard the nightmares, but of course we only hear people who've had the nightmares because, well, they are understandably angry and upset. Maybe you've had a good experience, or maybe you can join the list of people who aren't exactly enjoying the friendly skies these days. Give our talkback line a call here in town, 576-5207 in the St. John's area, 576-5207. Toll free, 1-800-465-6846. That's 1-800-465-6846. Or maybe you used to work in the industry and you're one of those people that Lois said, you know what, the airline let me go when times are tough and I found something else to do. I'd love to hear what you're doing these days.
For more CBC podcasts, go to cbc.ca/podcasts.